A prolific serial perpetrator's DNA has been linked to the case of a Colorado woman 4 decades later. On April 1, 1987, 30-year-old Rhonda Marie Fisher's body was found by a passing motorist down an embankment alongside a rural highway roughly 35 miles south of Denver. She had been indecently assaulted and was strangled till her end. Rhonda was last seen the night before she lost her life, walking north on Monaco toward Leetsdale in Denver, about an hour's drive north of where her body was found. In the weeks prior to her end, she had been staying with various acquaintances. For years, the detectives pursued leads involving these acquaintances. Early in the investigation, one such acquaintance was a person of interest but was eventually cleared. They also looked into several serial offenders who were active in the Denver metro area from the 1970s through the 1990s. Despite multiple investigative pushes, including a previous round of DNA testing in 2017 that failed to identify a suspect, the case went cold. Early 2025, almost 4 decades after the crime took place, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit reopened the case. They conducted a comprehensive review of all preserved evidence. Items that had not been retested previously were submitted. Late October, the investigators obtained a case-to-case match via the combined DNA index system. The DNA came from skin cells on 2 brown paper bags that had been placed over Rhonda's hands at the crime scene and then stored, untouched. Shane Williams, one of the forensic scientists who worked on the case, said, "Those paper bags were saved and had not been touched for 40 years, and so the thought is that whatever skin cells were on her hands also transferred to the inside of those brown paper bags." On December 2nd, 2025, the Douglas County Sheriff's Office publicly announced that the DNA matched Vincent Darrell Groves, a convicted serial offender who passed away in prison in 1996. Groves was an athlete at Wheat Ridge High School and then a college dropout who got into using and selling illegal substances, human trafficking, and eventually ending lives. Groves is considered one of Colorado's most prolific serial perpetrators. His violent criminal activity primarily targeted vulnerable women between 1978 and 1988. It is unclear how Groves encountered Rhonda, and there is no indication that they knew one another. Because Groves is no longer alive, he cannot be tried or convicted for Rhonda's case. Groves is believed to be responsible for at least a dozen crimes, along with an attempted slaying and an indecent assault in the Denver area. The numbers of victims may even be higher. Groves had been convicted of slaying in 1982, but served less than 5 years in prison. He was later convicted of ending the life of a woman in Douglas County in 1988, and another victim in a neighboring county the same year. Williams said that at the time, the paper bags would not have been used with DNA testing in mind. He said, "DNA was not a science that was being focused on or even known of in 1987. The coroner would not have been doing it for that purpose, but thankfully they did, so that we could solve this case." This resolved the 1987 case after nearly 40 years as a cold case. Rhonda Fisher was a mother, daughter, sister, and a friend. She has no immediate family that is still alive today, but she does have a cousin who was informed about the conclusion of the case. They were very happy to have answers. A major breakthrough has emerged in a 2007 cold case that has puzzled the investigators for nearly 2 decades in Laverne, Tennessee. Some questions have finally been answered, but many still remains. On November 14, 2007, Officer Rob Hayes was out looking for an unrelated missing person in a wooded area off Hollingdale Road when he spotted human remains. Hidden in brush was a woman's body, partly skeletal. She was unclothed, but wore a few pieces of jewelry, silent, stubborn clues that she had once been known and cared for. There was no identification, no answers, only questions. She entered the records as a Jane Doe, her case sealed by the limits of 2007 forensic technology. The investigators believed that she might be African American or multiracial, aged between 25 and 49. Her demise was immediately suspicious. The cause, a gunshot wound to the head. Someone had ended her life and then left her alone in the woods. Years passed with no answers. The detectives in different generations tried to match her to missing person reports, but without a name, her trail remained cold. Cases began, stalled, and closed around her silence. Her remains were carefully preserved, but justice froze in time. Then, in April 2021, 14 years later, something incredible happened. New rounds of searching through public DNA databases produced a distant match. Not enough to solve the case, but enough to shine the faintest light. Genetic genealogists at the DNA Doe Project took that spark and built a family tree branching backward through generations. Slowly, painstakingly, they followed threads of DNA toward a life once lived. Piece by piece, the unknown woman was no longer unknown. In late November 2025, after 18 long years, the investigators finally knew for certain who she was: 40-year-old Mary Alice Maloney. The announcement confirmed the truth of her origins. She had been from Connecticut, but was living in Nashville, Tennessee when she vanished. The police estimated that she had lost her life in the spring or summer of 2007. The discovery brought sorrow and relief together. Her name could be restored in records, spoken by the investigators, and if her loved ones are ever found, they could grieve properly. But her story remains unfinished. La Vergne police have determined that a cold case investigation into Mary's demise remains underway. No suspect has been named, no motive released. The path she walked on her final day is still unknown. Somewhere out there, someone knows why she never made it home. The police are asking anyone who knew Mary in Nashville or back in Hartford to come forward with even the smallest memory. DNA Doe team leader Jenny Lekas wrote in a statement, "Our work is often complicated by the lack of people who have uploaded their DNA profiles to the public databases we can use for our cases. That is why one of the recommendations we make to families of the missing is to make sure your DNA profile is in gedmatch.com, familytreedna.com, and dnajustice.org. A woman was brutally attacked in her own home in 1988 in Maryland. The perpetrator was finally identified decades later, thanks to DNA testing. Delores Marie Mooda Thompson was young, only 23 years old, when her life was violently cut short. On the morning of February 1st, 1988, her body was found in her own apartment, located on the 100 block of South Market Street in Frederick, Maryland. At that time, the investigators determined that she had suffered a ligature strangulation, and there was also evidence of an indecent assault. There were no obvious signs of forced entry at the apartment. That suggested she may have known or at least tolerated the person who entered. The investigation began, but forensic science was limited, especially in DNA profiling. Although the investigators collected evidence and interviewed people, including a man named Calvin Ziegler, who was known to Delores and reportedly frequently visited her apartment, they were unable to obtain a usable suspect profile. The case went cold. For nearly 37 years, her family and friends were left without answers, living with grief, uncertainty, and unanswered questions. As the years rolled on, the trail remained cold. The evidence collected in 1988, bedding, the crime scene, any biological traces, remained in storage. The investigators periodically reviewed the case file, but at the time, DNA analysis lacked the sensitivity to definitively link anyone to the crime. Despite numerous interviews, no forensic breakthrough could be achieved. Then, in 2025, something changed. Advances in forensic science allowed the investigators to revisit old evidence with fresh eyes. Crime scene personnel, led by specialist Sabrina Swan, re-examined materials from the original investigation, including pieces of bedding from Delores' apartment that had never before been tested. To their surprise, the newly processed DNA from that bedding produced a match in the state and national DNA databases: Calvin Ziegler. Ziegler had passed away in 2010. but documentation showed that he had indeed been interviewed in 1988 and was known to frequently visit Delores' apartment. In November 2025, after a full evidentiary review, the Frederick Police Department and the Frederick County State's Attorney's Office formally concluded that Ziegler was the source of the DNA and thus responsible for ending Delores' life. Because Ziegler is deceased, no charges can be filed against him. The case is being officially closed. For the family and loved ones of Delores, the announcement brought a mix of relief, sorrow, and complicated closure. Finally, after nearly 4 decades, there was an answer to the question of who did this. The anonymity and uncertainty of a cold case was replaced with a name. The police said, "While Ziegler can no longer be tried, the forensic result acknowledges the truth. A life was taken, a crime committed, but not forgotten." The investigators reiterated their respect for the enduring pain of the family, acknowledging that answers do not erase loss. For nearly 5 years, the pipe bomb planting on January 5, 2021, remained one of Washington's most haunting, unsolved mysteries. Then, under new leadership and renewed scrutiny, the case was reopened, dusted off. Evidence that once seemed circumstantial was re-examined. What once sat forgotten was relinked. Slowly, a suspect emerged. On the evening of January 5, 2021, 2 pipe bombs were planted in Washington, D.C., one behind the headquarters building of the Republican National Committee at 310 First Street Southeast, and another near the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee at 430 South Capitol Street Southeast 3. The bombs were found before they detonated. They were only discovered the following afternoon as Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in the last days of his first presidency. Kamala Harris, who was the U.S. Vice President-elect at the time, was evacuated from the Democratic National Committee headquarters shortly after the devices were found. Over the years, persons of interest have come and gone. The FBI assessed that the pipe bombs were made of a 1-inch by 8-inch pipe, end caps, a 14-gauge red and black electrical wire, a 9-volt battery, a 9-volt battery connector, a white kitchen timer, and steel wool, among other parts. Over nearly 5 years, the investigators reviewed roughly 39,000 video files, conducted more than 1,000 interviews, and received over 600 tips. The reward for information on the suspect, starting at $50,000, was raised to $100,000 and then $500,000 as the years passed by. Over time, theories abounded. Some speculated about political or ideological motives, given the bomb's placement near the DNC and RNC, though no solid link was ever established between the bombs and the later Capitol riot on January 6, 2021. Surveillance footage captured a figure wearing a gray hoodie, backpack, dark gloves, and distinctive Nike Air Max Speed Turf sneakers, with a yellow logo walking near the DNC and RNC at roughly 7:54 p.m. and 8:16 p.m. when the bombs were planted. Fewer than 25,000 of those shoes had been sold at the time the bombs were placed. The videos also showed the suspect adjusting their eyeglasses. The FBI has said it used the videos to estimate that the suspect was about 5 feet 7 inches tall. License plate reader data later showed a car matching Brian Cole Jr.'s vehicle, a 2017 Nissan Sentra, passing a South Capitol Street exit around 7:10 p.m., placing him less than half a mile from where the suspect was first spotted on foot. Cole did not become the focus of investigators' interest until 2025. The investigators went through Cole's purchase history and determined that he bought all of those supplies used to make the bomb over 2019 and 2020. He also purchased equipment that would help put together the bombs, including safety glasses and a wire stripping tool. The FBI has said the pipe bombs were viable and capable of harming anyone near them if they had exploded. The investigators found mobile phone data that showed Cole was near the locations of the pipe bombs when they were planted between 1939 and 2024 local time on January 5th. On the morning of December 4th, 2025, federal agents in armored vehicles descended upon Cole's family home. He lives with his parents and others in Woodbridge, Virginia, about 20 miles outside of Washington, D.C. The 30-year-old was arrested without incident. A neighbor who was an eyewitness to the arrest said that Woodbridge is like Sleepy Town and nothing ever happens here. Another neighbor said Mr. Cole would wear shorts all winter long, no matter how cold it was. Cole was known as the guy that walked the Chihuahua. Cole works for a bail bond company, a type of firm that helps people get out of jail by posting bail on their behalf for a fee. Cole's grandmother, Loretta, said the business is called Brian Cole Bail Bonds, named for and owned by his father, Brian Cole Sr. FBI agents raided the company's office as well on December 4th. Cole's grandmother described him as very naive and almost autistic-like. She said, "He would not hurt a fly. He is just not that kind of person." He had no known prior criminal record and even was not registered to vote. Cole told FBI investigators during interviews that he believed the 2020 election was stolen, echoing U.S. President Donald Trump's false mantra that the election he lost to Joe Biden was rigged. According to prosecutors, the arrest was not spurred by any new tip or external informant, but rather by a fresh review of existing evidence under new leadership at the FBI and the U.S. Department of Justice. Key evidence included purchase records matching bomb components, cell tower and phone location records placing Cole near the bomb sites on January 5th, license plate reader data for his car, and photogrammetry comparing surveillance footage suspects' height and build to Cole's. At the arrest announcement, the authorities said the case that was once cold was solved through good, diligent police work and collaboration. Cole was charged with transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce with intent to end lives, injure or intimidate an attempted malicious destruction by means of explosives. Court filings indicate that he confessed to planting the bombs. During his first federal court appearance, Cole was not shackled. His family was present and reportedly shouted support. He did not enter a plea. He will remain in custody until a detention hearing. The prosecutors have noted more charges may follow depending on further investigations. The publicly released documents and media reports so far have not established a definite motive for the crimes. It remains unclear whether the bombings were connected to the mob attack on the U.S. Capitol the next day, or if the timing was merely coincidental. Skeletal remains found almost 35 years ago in a swamp in New York has finally been identified. On September 14, 1991, human remains were found at the bottom of a drained swamp near the intersection of Woods Road and Eaton Lane in Greenville, Orange County. The discovery was made when the property owner drained the area, exposing fully clothed human remains. Several personal items were found with the body, including a wallet with no identification, a set of keys, eyeglasses, and a wristwatch. Due to the advanced decomposition of the body, the exact cause of demise could not be determined, but the case was investigated as a suspected slaying from the outset. It was believed that the decedent may have lost their life 5 to 20 years prior to discovery. Over the following years, the investigators worked to determine the man's identity using conventional forensic methods. A DNA profile was eventually developed and searched through the combined DNA index system, but no match was found. In 2011, the case was entered into the National Missing and Unidentified Person System. Despite continued efforts, the individual remained unidentified. In 2024, after 33 years went by, the New York State Police submitted skeletal remains from the case to Othram, a forensic laboratory specializing in human identification from degraded or limited samples. Othram's scientists developed a suitable DNA extract and used forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile. This profile was then returned to law enforcement, and the New York State Police used it to perform a forensic genetic genealogy search. The Port Jervis Police Department located a hard copy blotter entry from October 1, 1976. That included a missing person report for a man named Mikolai Celesz. The following year, in December 2025, the investigators gathered DNA samples from members of his family. After analysis, the police announced that the remains were identified as Mikolai Celesz's. Mikolai had been missing for decades. He was 76 years old at the time of his disappearance. Details surrounding his disappearance remain under investigation. His identification marks an important step forward in a cold case that had remained stalled for more than 30 years. The New York State Police continue to investigate the circumstances surrounding Mikolai. Anyone with information regarding his disappearance, please call NYSP Troop F Communications at 8453-445-300 and reference case number 3021756. Two cold cases that happened in Kissimmee, Florida years apart has been solved. 17-year-old DeAndre Nathaniel Wellnitz was fatally stabbed in the chest while at a party at a house on Ivy Lane on June 24, 2007. The investigators said that the case went cold months into the investigation. Jommil Baez-Quinones was shot several times near Indian Point Circle on February 23, 2022. He was pronounced deceased at the scene. After exhausting all leads, the case went cold. Both cases were reopened in October 2024. The investigators with the agency's cold case program, which was formed in 2024, solved the cases. In the 2007 case of DeAndre, the investigators identified a person of interest in the case in October 2024. The person was located in Orlando in September 2025 and was interviewed. During the interview, the person of interest admitted to being at the party and told the investigators that he was hit during a fight. He told the investigators that he picked up a kitchen knife and waved it to keep others away. The investigators said that he acted in self-defense and that no charges would be filed. DeAndre's mother, Kelly McDonald, said during a December 9th press conference, "After 18 years, an angel appeared. It was her prayer that her son's case would be solved." She said, "I appreciate the empathy that was shown as well as them being straightforward with all of the details. What it has done for me has given me closure. I am able to stop playing the story that I have played for 18 years over and over again in my head. I am able to see something different. I am able to have peace now." She hopes other families can get some sort of resolve. In the 2022 case of Jommil, a suspect, 23-year-old Luis Eluvar Gonzalez, was located with the help of U.S. Marshals and arrested. The state attorney's office filed charges on September 19, 2025. Gonzalez was charged with first-degree manslaughter with a weapon and first-degree robbery with a firearm, both of which are felonies. The sheriff's office encouraged anyone with information to contact Crime Line at 800-423-TIPS, 8477. The Kern County Sheriff's Office has teamed up with Othram to generate new leads in a 2010 cold case. In November 2010, just 2 days before Thanksgiving, the police responded to a call at La Especia Bakery located on Union Street in Bakersfield, California. La Especia Bakery's beloved owner and baker, 49-year-old Juanita Francisco, was found in a back room of the store. She had been beaten to her end, and the bakery was ransacked. Juanita was a mother to 3 children. At the time of the attack, forensic evidence belonging to the assailant was collected, and a DNA profile was obtained from the evidence. An STR profile was developed, but there was no match to a known individual in law enforcement databases. Despite extensive investigative efforts, the suspect could not be identified, and the case went cold. Since the attack, the investigation has remained open with family members and community members working hard to keep Juanita's memory alive. Her children continued to give interviews about how her loss affected them and affected the Bakersfield community. Greg, one of her sons, said, Many customers came to me and said to me that she would always listen to them, and any troubles that they may be having, she was always there to listen to them and be a friend, even if they had only recently met her." Greg described her as a pillar of the Rexland Acres community, quiet yet personable, with a big laugh. Eddie, another son, recalls that when he was 13 years old, the antibiotics he was given for an infection caused an allergic reaction in the form of severe asthma attacks. So, as not to disturb his sleeping brother, he slumbered in the living room. Juanita did not want him to be alone, so she gave him the long couch while she slept on the recliner for a week. That was how his mother showed her love and concern. Her daughter Gina said that her mother's personality was amazing. She recalled her mom could not dance, but she was always moving. Gina said that she reopened the bakery, now known as Juanita's Bakery, to heal. She feels her mother's presence there. Despite the case going cold, the investigators with the Kern County Sheriff's Office and the Kern Regional Crime Laboratory have continued to explore new avenues to find the perpetrator. In 2025, law enforcement has teamed with Othram to determine if advanced DNA testing will help identify a suspect in this terrible crime. Forensic evidence has been submitted to Othram for analysis, where scientists were using forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile for the unknown suspect. Othram's in-house forensic genetic genealogy team conducted a genealogical search to generate new investigative leads. Kern County Sheriff's Office Detective Ashley Sanchez said in a video, "She was somebody's mother. She reminded me of my grandmother. She was just working at her bakery that she worked for years. And she felt safe there, and she should have been safe there." Anyone with information about Juanita's demise is asked to call KCSO at 661-861-3110 or Secret Witness at 661-322-4040.